Uh, Thanks to everyone for attending this evening. And certainly thank you for the use of this beautiful space. We've worked in all sorts of different settings over the years. And this is really a standout space. So thank you. As Pat said, we've been working for a couple of months to get started. And we've learned a lot already. We look forward to continuing to learn. We're in listening mode at this point. It's still early on in the process, which we can walk through what the process looks like exactly. But really, right now we're in sort of listening and learning mode to understand some of the past and present conditions here in Hampden that will have an impact on what the plan looks like. Here's an agenda for the evening. First, just a welcome and some introductions. And then second, we can give you a brief high-level overview of the master plan process, starting with what is a master plan, and then what is our process for working with you to put it together. Third, baseline conditions. Julia, my colleague, can walk through some of the baseline conditions that we've already looked at, identified, that can help lay the foundation for the plan. And then we'll really get into the public workshop component of the evening. We have a few stations that are basically structured around the different chapters of the master plan. So we look forward to, and thanks in advance for your participation during that process. We'd love to hear everything that you can offer us in terms of some local insights into each of these chapters, which are different but interrelated, but certainly cover a lot of ground. So if you guys can really be sort of forthcoming and candid and tonight and let us know about some of the concerns that you have or some of the ideas you have for the future, look forward to hearing those. Finally, we can talk about our next steps over the next couple of months, the summer, early fall, before we adjourn. Sorry, I gotta click both here. So for welcome and introductions, for the steering committee, for those that are in attendance, either in person or online, if you'd like to maybe stand up and introduce yourself. And let us know, who you are, the background that you bring to the steering committee. That might be good for folks to know about. So, Pat, you've introduced yourself, but maybe, yeah.
So you know me, and maybe Connie, you want to start?
Well, in Hampden for about 30 years. And it seems like that long is a great place to live. I'd like to do that. Decided I would serve on this committee if there's anything to do.
I'm Dan Blanchard, the Hampden Parks Rec Director. Everyone, I'm back here doing technical stuff if they need stuff like emergency.
Stan. And Don and Joe.
Joe's on his way, and I don't know if Don's online or not.
Okay, if Joe arrives, we'll prompt him to introduce himself. Here is the VHB team. My name is Luke Mitchell. I lead the land planning team for VHB. VHB, by the way, is a pretty big company. We have offices up and down the East Coast, but we were founded here in Massachusetts in the 60s or the 70s, a long time ago, before I started working there. But we're a planning and engineering firm, and we have a lot of different types of professionals under one roof. The team that Julia and I work on is called the land planning team, but we look at all sorts of issues around city planning, town planning, certainly all the different aspects that a comprehensive plan covers, from housing to economics, and certainly the natural sciences and conserving land ecosystems, transportation planning. So that's the land planning team. Julia, who you'll hear more from in a few slides, is the project manager for this project. So she's the primary point of contact and really helping to push forward in a day-to-day basis. Jenny Nelson is joining remotely. Jenny is a project planner on our team, and she'll also be supporting the master plan as well. If I'm not wrong, Jenny will be working on the public facilities and services chapter, which is of course critically important. So Jenny may be in touch with some of you in terms of looking at the emergency services, the condition of the roads, the schools, things like that. Janelle Franklin is on our team. She'll also be providing support and helping to draft a few chapters. I think land use, housing, economic development. Nicole Benjamin Ma is, she's great. She's a preservation planner. She's all about historic preservation. And she's a real wealth of knowledge about what it takes in Massachusetts to take precious assets from history and preserve them, and not just administratively, but also to help find funding to preserve historic assets and things like that. And then Bill Cranshaw, last member of our team, he's a transportation planner for VHB. So he'll be writing that chapter on transportation, mobility, parking, roads, things like that, and anything else relating to public transit, although of course in a rural town like Hampden, that's quite limited. But certainly sidewalks, bike lanes, anything like that, Bill can touch upon. Okay, so now for an overview of the master plan process, beginning with what is a master plan. So a master plan in Massachusetts is guided by Massachusetts general law, chapter 41, section 81D. So it's written out pretty clearly in state law what a master plan is, what it consists of, and how it's structured. But a master plan documents where a community comes from, what it is today, and what direction it has to go in the future. It's a policy guide aligned with a community's established future vision. Vision's an important word there. Part of the master plan is to craft a vision for the community. It's usually about a half a page vision, maybe a full page, nothing set in stone. What matters is that it covers at a very high level what the community hopes to achieve in the future. And then from the vision comes the community's goals and actions. So next, it provides a framework for future land use decision-making and the physical development of the municipality. That's not to imply that a master plan compels a community to have development happening all over the place. In many cases, communities are very pro-development. In other cases, communities want to restrict development. But the master plan is basically the platform within which you can craft that, okay, well, maybe we do want some development, but it has to be located over here, or it has to be this character of development. The master plan basically it allows for a dialogue around the issues like that. In terms of the lifespan of a comprehensive plan, we typically say it's about 10 to 15 years, which sounds like a long time. But it really is when you think about some of the initiatives that are discussed in the master plan. These things take a lot of time. So 10 to 15 years is the horizon that we'll be looking at for Hampden's master plan. And by the way, when we can talk a little bit more about the implementation section of the master plan, but that's the part of the master plan where you can really think about short-term, medium-term, long-term. things that a master plan is not. So it is not a zoning ordinance. It is not a subdivision regulation, a budget, capital improvement program, or other regulatory documents. These are all things that might emerge out of a master plan. In other words, within a master plan, you as a community might decide to pass a zoning ordinance or support a new type of subdivision regulation. But the master plan itself doesn't contain any of those on its own. It really provides a framework for developing those tools. So the master plan will include a comprehensive analysis of community aspects, along with related short-term and long-term actions to support the vision, as I described earlier. And it will contain an implementation framework to promote the actualization of the plan. And the goal is to achieve all of that in the most accountable and transparent way as possible. In other words, so that there's no questions, why did the town do this? We didn't see this coming. Our challenge on this assignment is to involve as many people in the community as we can in the dialogue, and get input from everybody, because it's the community's plan. So it needs to be authored collectively by the community. Here's the 8 chapters in a master plan. Do these ever vary? Yes. We had a client recently, Pembroke, Massachusetts. They had issues with the way that one of these chapters was titled, what it was going to cover. So they asked if we could be flexible and change it. So we did. So, this is a discussion that you can have and that we can have with the committee. But so far, the direction we've received is let's stick to the standard 8 chapters. If anybody has input on that tonight, very happy to have that discussion with you. But the standard chapters are first land use. So land use is all about looking at the way that you're regulating what the owners of properties can do with those properties. The most common vehicle for enforcing the town's land use preferences is zoning. With zoning, you can allow certain uses, prohibit other uses. You can determine the path by which a landowner can get something built. And also you can control the dimensional requirements, the setbacks, height, density, stuff like that. Next is housing. Housing is a very complicated and thorny issue that I feel like in the Boston Globe, there's something about housing every day these days. Housing has always been an issue, but right now the affordability of housing in Massachusetts and really nationwide is sky high relative to wages. So every town is going to respond to that differently. And the question for Hampden is, how are you going to respond to that? For households who are, I might take one of those waters, Pat, if you're still offering. Thank you. But I think there's a lot of interesting questions there. What kind of housing do you want to see in the future? And for households who may be struggling to afford housing or find the right type of housing, what can you do in the master plan to help address some of those issues? Next is economic development. Economic development is all about the businesses that exist already in Hampden and the potential future businesses that may end up here and their employment and jobs. Land use is very related to economic development, but it's a really interesting discussion. What can be done to make sure that you have the right number of jobs and the right kind of jobs and the right businesses to support people's needs. Fourth is historic and cultural resources. So there's a lot there. There's a lot in Hampden that's worthy of discussing in terms of their historic value. So what can be done to strengthen those assets? Next, open space and recreation. You have a lot of fabulous resources in town already. So what can be done in terms of that? Next, public facilities and services, as I mentioned, that covers a lot of ground. But really in the master plan, it's recognizing the most the most urgent needs and what can be done to address those. Next is on transportation. Do you have the right facilities in place? And then finally, energy and climate. We were just talking about it, you know, the projects that have sort of solar farms and things like that. There's a lot of hot button issues when it comes to energy and climate. So, you know, there's a lot that can be unpacked there that we look forward to discussing with you. I won't go through every last step of this diagram, but this is really an overview of the master plan process. Step one on the left is to identify issues and opportunities. That's the phase of the process that we're in now. Stakeholder engagement, like tonight, but we're doing, we've already spoken with several folks in town. We'll continue to do that. Collecting data and analyzing it, it all feeds into a baseline analysis. So again, issues and opportunities. Issues meaning what are the challenges that the community faces? Opportunities meaning what are the sort of opportunities that are out there that haven't been realized yet, that the town can put resources into advancing. Step two, set the community vision and the goals that support that vision. Step three is the actionable recommendations that can be performed to achieve the goals. And then step four, as I mentioned, is the implementation plan. So taking all of those different actions and laying them out on a timeline, what comes first, second, third, etc. And this will start to get at the issues of costs. Lots of actions that are associated with a master plan have costs associated with them. How is it going to get paid for? Important questions like that. Also, regulatory changes. Does the zoning need to be updated to advance this? Spoiler alert, there are lots of actions that typically are associated with master plans. Each chapter can have anywhere from, well, again, there's no formula, but typically the ones that we prepare can have anywhere from 4 to 16 to 20 actions coming out of each chapter. So all told, it can be 80, 100, 120 actions. So that's where the implementation aspect of the plan becomes so important, because if you're looking at 100 actions in the face, it can be a little daunting. So you have to find a way to streamline and organize around those actions. And then very importantly, step 5 is the handoff and the implementation. Because some plans are prepared, sit on a shelf and gather dust. Other plans get implemented by an active group of people within the community who take it upon themselves to make sure that things get changed. So that's a really important part of the process that we want to be wary of as we're working. And then, so for some baseline conditions, I'm going to hand it off to Julia, who has already started looking at some of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. And just to reintroduce myself, my name is Julia Mintz. I'm the main point of contact. So I'll have my contact information at the end. And if you continue to engage with the master planning process, you'll see me quite a lot. So Luke just gave a great overview of the different master plan elements. But before we break into the interactive portion of the meeting, I'll break down just a little bit more what each of these chapters covers and some high-level facts about where the town is today. So population-wise, I'm going to refer back to.
That's as good as we can do, sorry.
I'll read through the slides and give an overview.
We provide the deck to.
Yeah.
One at the end.
Yeah, we can send out the slide deck as well. So population-wise, the town currently has approximately 5,000 people. And while the overall population has gradually declined over the past decade, it's remained relatively, it's remaining relatively level. But that follows county and state trends as well in terms of population. And again, we'll send out the slides after so you can take a closer look at the map. But regionally, Hampden is located approximately 10 miles southeast of Springfield and along the northern banks of the Scantic River. Bordered to the east, to the west by East Longmeadow, Wilbraham to the north, Monson to the east, and is on the border of Connecticut to the south. So we'll be taking a look. Just we're
Peter, let her make her speech. You don't know it?
just setting the stage. We have some folks online as well, so we're setting the stage for discussion today. So the land use chapter, like Luke mentioned, will provide an assessment of the regulatory structure and underlying existing development patterns in the town. So just to look at the map, commercial development is concentrated around the town center and throughout the western section of the town. And the eastern section is mostly mountainous terrain and is primarily residential. The housing chapter will provide an assessment a bit more about the demographic conditions of the town, population conditions, and then the state of the town's housing stock. So looking at home values, costs to homeowners and renters, and then with regard to those different demographic groups, what specific needs are. So for example, the chart that's up here shows the percentage of the town's population that's currently over the age of 65, which has been steadily increasing over the past decade as an overall percentage of the town's population. So something that we've been chatting about with stakeholders, just as an example of different housing types, is the need for senior housing. And we'll be taking a look at what the different needs are for groups such as folks over the age of 65 over the coming decade. Taking a look at the economy, we'll take a look at both the regional and the local scale. So for example, the chart up on the screen shows that approximately 40% of residents in Hampden commute out of the town for employment. We'll be taking a look at trends like employment regionally, as well as market conditions, how the town is in terms of being hospitable to new businesses. We'll be speaking with local business owners and thinking about potential development needs that the town may experience in the future and what the market demand is. Regarding historic and cultural resources, like Luke mentioned, this chapter will look at the town's resources, opportunities, and relevant stakeholders with regard to these resources, as well as regional partners and programs that work to enhance and preserve. So the Hampden Historical Society, being one of those stakeholders, is dedicated to preserving the history of Hampden. We'll be looking at some of the specific sites. So for example, Hampden has one property, the Thornton Burgess House, that's listed in the National Register of Historic Places, as well as over 118 resources that are listed in the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Database, which are maintained by the Massachusetts Historical Commission. So recognizing the different stakeholders and groups that are involved in preserving these resources will be an important part of this chapter. For open space and recreation, and this is a map that's taken from the town's current open space and recreation plan. The darker green areas of the map showing areas that are currently protected and recreational open space. We'll be looking at some of the town's existing goals for open space and recreation. So some of those are to maintain historic quality and physical appearance of the town center, managing physical development in the future to preserve and enhance resources, where appropriate, capitalizing on the town's environmental attributes and rural character, protecting water resources, which is critical to environmental health, maximizing utilization of recreation and conservation facilities for all town residents, and equitably distributing services, and then looking at preservation of agricultural and forestry land for future generations. Public facilities and services, like we've mentioned, we'll be looking at staffing needs, capital improvement needs over the next decade for different town facilities and services. So again, just depicted on the map are the location of town hall, the public library, the highway department, fire and police, housing authority. We'll be taking a look at educational facilities in this chapter, and charting out what the town needs to support current gaps, and as well as thinking about growth over the next decade, what these different entities are going to need going forwards. And then finally, transportation and mobility. We'll take a look at the town's transportation and infrastructure systems. So notably, the town currently has around 55 miles of roadway, 9 bridges, no state highways or numbered routes, currently no designated bike lanes, no public transportation, minimal sidewalks, and roadways are in good condition. So as we've heard from stakeholders that we've talked with so far, but again, thinking about how this infrastructure will fit the town's needs going into the future, if there's any needs that are not currently being met, and how to keep good circulation through the town. So that kind of sets the stage for the next portion of the meeting, which is where we want to hear from you. Around the front of the room, we have flip charts for each of the topics that I just mentioned, as well as some pens and sticky notes. And we encourage you to come up to the front to circulate around. The committee, as well as Luke and I, will be walking around and chatting with folks just about issues and opportunities, needs that you currently perceive within the town for these different issue areas. Like Luke mentioned, there's some flexibility with the naming of chapters and the topics that they cover. If there's something that you think is really critical that one of these chapters covers, we encourage you to write it down. Questions, really, again, we're in listening mode. We're here to chat with you about these different topics. As well as online, we have Jennifer Nelson, who'll be chatting with folks about these different topics. Anything else, Luke or Pat?
I shared the survey at the.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe just mention that now, but.
Yeah, so we'll rejoin the last few minutes to talk about next steps. We do have a public survey that we're going to be launching tonight. Yeah, and we'll distribute the link to this as well with the slides after the meeting. The survey will cover a lot of the topics that we're getting into today, but in a little bit more depth. So this engagement starts today for the master planning process, but it's going to continue on over the coming weeks as we get into developing the plan. So for folks online, please feel free to copy the link, and we'll send it out to all meeting attendees as well following the meeting.